Hi, my name is John. Today I will teach you about sight reading. Does the score appear like this when you are trying to sight read? Sight reading doesn't need to be scary. In fact, sight reading can be quite fun. Here are some tips to improve your sight reading. Recognizing intervals will help your sight reading skills. This means you have to recognize how intervals such as seconds, thirds, fourths, all the way until octaves look like both harmonic and melodic intervals. Notice that an interval of a second looks quite unique, with one note placed on the left and the other on the right, but on top of each other. In fact, all of the intervals look unique. Recognizing these intervals will help you to sight read faster. For higher grades, that involves recognizing chords in their different inversions too. Recognizing the shape of the melody will also help you sight read faster. Think of the notes as a picture or a graph. Are the notes going up or going down? If the notes go up higher on the score, your hand or finger should move to the right of the keyboard, and vice versa. For lower grade students that are not familiar with the letter names of notes, it will be much easier for you to sight read if you think of the notes as going step by step up or step by step down, or two steps up or two steps down, etc. You do not need to worry about whether the note is A, B, or C first. Of course, as your note reading skills improve, eventually you will be able to recognize letter names quickly, and that would enable you to sight read even faster. Recognizing scale-like passages and arpeggio patterns will also help you sight read better. You can apply what you have learned in theory to sight reading. For lower grades, FACE and ACG will help you identify notes. Key signatures and Italian, French, and German terms and directions learned in theory will also help with your sight reading. Another key element of sight reading is the key signature. Here you have to apply what you have learned in music theory and scales. Every key signature has a distinctive pattern. This should be memorized as well as the sequence of the sharps and flats. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, and B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Sight reading tests in the exam range from 1 sharp or flat in grade 1 to up to 5 sharps or flats in grade 8. Being familiar with the scale and arpeggio of the key will also help with sight reading. One thing that is quite important, but students often overlook while sight reading, is that accidentals apply to the same note within the same bar. So it is a good idea to constantly remind yourself of the sharps or flats in the key signature, and also any sharps or flats that you have seen and played before within the bar. Listen to this example. There was a mistake at the end as the student forgot to play the last F note as an F sharp. Because of the first F sharp note, all the F notes in this bar become F sharp notes as well. So the correct one should be Sight reading piano music involves coordination between the left and right hand. Many students find it difficult to sight read with both hands together. For practice, you can always try sight reading with one hand first. First try playing the piece with the right hand alone, then the left hand. Then try to combine them together slowly. Of course, playing with both hands is required during the sight reading section of the exam. However, practicing with one hand first will give you the confidence to sight read with both hands at a later stage. While you should try to play as many correct notes as possible when sight reading, another important aspect of sight reading is counting. When sight reading, do not forget to count along while playing. For practice at home, use a metronome to help with your counting. One common mistake students make is to try to sight read a piece using a tempo, speed, that is too fast. Remember, the slower the speed is, the easier it is to sight read a piece. So unless you are quite confident, choose a slower speed, even if the tempo indication is allegro, fast. Rhythm is another important aspect of sight reading. Students often get the notes correct, but not the rhythm or counting. When sight reading a piece, you should try to figure out the smallest note value. For example, if the smallest note value is quaver or semiquaver, you should count in 1 and 2 and instead of just 1, 2. When you are practicing at home, clapping out the rhythm of the piece will also help improve your ability in sight reading rhythms too. Sight reading is like running hurdles. A hurdler will never stop running forward, even if any of the hurdles or obstacles fall in the middle of the race. Similarly, when you are sight reading, try not to stop, especially when you have made a small mistake. Keep counting and keep going on. If you realized your mistake and you really want to attempt the note or chord the second time, do that only if you are very confident that you will play correctly the second time. Do not try to attempt a note, chord, or bar multiple times. It is better to skip some notes and not stop the flow of the music. Of course, if you skip too many notes, you will also get less marks. Listen to two different attempts of this passage. The second attempt was a more successful one, although the chord highlighted in red was still wrong. This is because in the first attempt, the student tried too many times to get that same chord correct. Don't worry too much about the given fingerings in a sight reading test. The examiner is expecting correct notes rather than correct fingerings. That said, starting the piece with the suggested fingerings will often make it easier to play the piece, especially for lower grades. The general rule is if you don't see any new fingerings, just use whichever finger that is the most convenient to play the notes. New fingerings often mean that you have to move your hand to a new position, or your finger has to be tucked under, or it has to cross over. Fingerings are clues to help you to play the notes, but don't worry if you don't get them right, as long as you play the correct notes. Another important aspect is listening to yourself when you play. If it sounds weird, if the notes are dissonant instead of harmonious, then most of the time it means that you have played something wrong. Of course, in higher grades, it is possible for students to be given a piece that is in a modern style. That means dissonances are purposely written in by the composer. In that case, it will be quite difficult to tell whether you are playing the correct notes by listening. But most of the time, the pieces are not supposed to be dissonant. So especially when practicing at home, you should try to correct notes or chords that sound wrong or dissonant. During the exam, you should correct notes or chords that sound wrong only if you are confident of getting them right on the second try. Do not spend too much time trying to get a passage correct. Listen to two attempts of this passage. Are you able to spot the mystic? Yes, the second attempt was correct. Now, to the most important part. During the exam, you will be given 30 seconds of preparation time for the sight reading section. You are allowed to try playing the piece out loud. No marks will be deducted for mistakes made during the 30 seconds. So go ahead, be brave and try playing the piece. For lower grades like grade 1 and grade 2, the piece is only 6 to 8 bars long. So it is possible to finish trying out the entire piece within 30 seconds. But for the other grades, oftentimes it is not possible to try out the entire piece within 30 seconds. So it is wise for students to try out the beginning and the ending of the piece, usually the first 2 bars and the last 2 bars of the piece. This is because the beginning and ending of a piece are the most important sections. After trying out the first 2 bars and the last 2 bars, if there is still time left, you should then look for difficult passages in the piece to try out. For example, passages with more accidentals. But before that, do not forget to look at the key signature, time signature, and the tempo directions. For students in grades 6 to 8, there will also be a piece title. It often provides a clue about the genre or the style and period of the piece, so do not forget to look at the title first. During the 30 seconds, when you are trying the piece out loud, it is very useful to find out the tonality of the piece, that is, whether it is in a major or minor key. Sight reading tests for lower grades do not modulate, change key at all. For higher grades, although there is usually a modulation in the middle of the piece will still end in the home key. Sometimes the piece might start with treble clef in both hands or bass clef in both hands, and there might be a clef change in the middle. You should take note of this during the 30 seconds of preparation time. When sight reading, first try to get the notes and the rhythm correct. Then pay attention to the smaller details, such as the dynamics and terms and directions. A sight reading attempt that follows the dynamics and terms and directions in the piece will get higher marks than one that is lacking such details. For higher grade students, pedal marks and soft pedal indications can often be found at the end of the piece. You should pay attention to them. This is another reason why you should try out the beginning and the ending of the piece during the 30 seconds of preparation time. Something that is very beneficial to improving your sight reading is to try as many new pieces on your own as possible at home without the teacher's guidance. The more new pieces you try on your own, the better you will be at sight reading. You can start with pieces in the same book that your teacher has not taught you yet, but you are interested to learn, either exam pieces that you are not learning for exam, or pieces that are easier than your current grade. For advanced students, once you get used to the tactile feel of the keyboard, you will sight read much better too. The black keys of the piano are raised for a reason. If you are familiar enough with the keyboard, you will not need to look down at the keyboard to find notes, but rather just by feeling where the black keys are. Of course, this takes practice and only applies to advanced students.
We have come to the end of the webinar. I hope that you have learned something about sight reading today and that sight reading will be an enjoyment rather than a chore. Thank you for watching.